Good afternoon. My name is Mark Wenzel. I'm the supervisor of the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board branch, Energy Safety. Before the chair starts today's meeting, I'll ask Unique Coleman, the analyst of the board staff, to talk about how to participate in today's meeting.
Hello, everyone. We welcome public comment during the general comment period on the agenda, and if desired, after any agenda item. The public may participate and comment in person or remotely by Teams or by phone. Please note that public comment may be limited to 3 minutes per participant. Participants will be called upon in turn. Participants can use the raise hand function on the Teams video conference, and they will be called upon. Participants on the phone may dial *5 when they wish to speak to be placed in a queue by the operator. Please note that the chat is disabled. Written comment. You may send written questions and comments during the meeting to our email address, wsab@energysafety.ca.gov. You may submit written comments after the meeting to the same email address, wsab@energysafety.ca.gov, or to the docket for this meeting. Instructions for doing so are in the agenda. Written comments we receive will be posted on the docket portion of our website. Relevant materials for today's meeting may be found on our website. The link can be found on the public agenda for today's meeting. Meeting materials are also available in the room for those of you who are present in the room. You may also sign in on the sign-in sheet at entry. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Sean Richards, Senior Policy Advisor, to review the building's emergency protocols for those of us meeting in person.
Good evening. In case of emergency, we will be exiting out of the back of the room, turning right and heading down the stairs. Once we exit down to the bottom floor, we will be on the northeast corner of the building. We will turn left to M Street, follow it down a block and a half, and congregate at the corner of M and 21st Street.
Thank you, Unique. Sean. Chair Block, we've completed the housekeeping announcements.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Jessica Block. I'm chair of this board, and I will now call this meeting to order. Today is June 4th, 2025. The meeting for the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board. And Mark, please take the roll.
Board Member Armstrong.
Here.
Board Member Armstrong here. Board Member Batcher.
Here.
Board Member Batcher here. Chair Block.
Here.
Chair Block here. Board Member Haynes.
Here.
Board Member Haynes here. Board Member Mader. Here. Board Member Mader here. Vice Chair Porter.
Here.
Vice Chair Porter here. Board Member Seifert.
Here.
Board Member Seifert here. Chair, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. I want to thank all of my fellow board members for being here. There are 6 of us in person and only 1 virtual. This is really great news. Thank you all for being those who be here in person with us in the audience. I'd also like to thank our Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety IT professional Alex Moore for coming down to meet with us. Our supervisor Mark Wenzel, our senior advisor Sean Richards, and our panelist Unique Coleman for assisting with and organizing this meeting. This is a wonderful venue, and we're very happy to be here. I'd like to ask to kick off. I'd like to ask my fellow board members if they have any opening statements. Look. What about Dr. Board Member Seifert on the phone? Do you have any opening comments?
No, I don't. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to save my comments for the agenda items as well, but I'm really looking forward to, we have quite a few agenda items that are substantive and looking forward to proceeding. Let's review the meeting agenda. In a moment, we're going to begin with an update from the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety, and then we will go to, we will dive into our recommendation Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety, which is one of our primary goals for this meeting, is to on those discuss plans for fire mitigation plans of public utilities and electrical cooperatives. Next, we'll talk about the board's 2025-2027 strategic plan. Next, the board will discuss and vote on the minutes for 2025. After the agenda items for future, and then public comments, and then adjourn. Okay. To start today's meeting, Dakota Smith, supervisor within the Electrical Safety Policy Division, will present an update on a recent reorganization and energy safety's work reviewing the WMPs. Is Dakota online? All right, I will hand it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. As mentioned, I'm Dakota Smith. I'm a project and program supervisor at Energy Safety's Electrical Safety Policy division. I think we can go to the next slide. And I'll be providing an update today about what ESPD has been achieving since our last meeting, and I'll provide an overview on what we will be working on in the upcoming months. I'll be talking about a recent restructure of the ESPD branches, and then I'll provide updates on our various activities, such as the wildfire mitigation plans, the risk model working group, safety culture assessments, executive compensation structures, and safety certifications. Next slide. I'll start with the branch restructuring in ESPD. The safety culture branch, which has been covering safety culture assessments, executive compensation, and safety certifications, is now under the electrical undergrounding and culture division, or EUCD, which was recently formed to receive the SB 884 10-year undergrounding plans. However, work streams and reports will not change. This is simply an administrative internal restructuring, and with that, each of the divisions has a new program manager. For EUCD, that is now Susie Rose, and for ESPD, that is now it is now our former ESPD supervisor. It is Nicole Dunlap. Next slide. All right, I'll move on to the wildfire mitigation plans. So for the 2025 WMP update evaluations, we published our decisions for LS Power on February 18th. We published our decision for Liberty on April 8th, and for PacifiCorp on April 28th. The PUC ratified these decisions of LS Power and Liberty on April 24th and May 9th, respectively, and a PacifiCorp ratification is scheduled for June 26th, so that is later on this month. We are currently evaluating a petition to amend from SDG&E, which was submitted on April 10th, and we are also evaluating a change order request from Liberty that was submitted on April 22nd. Next slide. As for the 2026 to 2028 the base plans, we have received the base plans from PG&E, from Bear Valley, SDG&E, and SCE on time. We are currently evaluating these. We are sending data requests and are actively having internal evaluations and conversations on these. We held our first workshop last month on May 21st. These covered other plans from PG&E, Bear Valley, San Diego, and SC. The remaining plans are due this month and next month. We got Liberty's pre-submission on May 30th, and their formal filing is due on June 27th. For Pacificor, we are getting the pre-submission on this Friday, and their formal filing is due July 11th. The ITO's pre-submission is due next Friday, the 13th, and those formal filings are due July 25th. We also have the second workshop that will cover all of the upcoming plans scheduled for the 29th of July as well. So that's upcoming. Next slide. Just an update on the guidelines. We adopted our most recent guidelines on February 21st, as well as the maturity model and survey guidelines on March 19th. The update guidelines chapter is to be included in the guidelines package, and we are currently working on that and are expecting to adopt that later this year. And we'll have a public, we'll publish a draft and have that open for a public comment period as well. Next slide. All right, we can move on to the risk model working group then. ESPD is developing an approaches document, which we previously called the best practices document. This is an attempt to document how electrical corporations model or should model their wildfire risk. The risk model working group meetings in 2025 are to focus on sections of the document, and conversations and outcomes from these meetings will inform the writing and content of this document. The phase 2 summary report, which is summarizing the 2023 risk model working group meetings, will be published to the docket in the next couple of weeks. So that will be posted soon. Next slide. Safety culture assessments is next. For the 2024 safety culture assessments, the data collection for those are complete. The draft analysis has been submitted by the contractor and is currently with us for review. A publication of the 2024 safety culture reports for the ECs are targeted for this year in late Q3. As for the 2025 SCAs, those are scheduled to start at the end of this year in Q4. Energy safety, ESPD, and the joint IU and the joint IOUs participated in a public workshop last month on the 19th to go over a coordination between the SPD SCA process and energy safety's SCA process. Next slide. All right, next we have executive compensation structures. For executive compensation structures, energy safety adopted its executive compensation guidelines on April 2nd of this year. We received the executive compensation structures from Bear Valley, PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E on May 23rd. And the publication of the 2025 executive compensation structure decisions are targeted for Q3 of this year. And last, I think we have safety certifications. Energy safety adopted its safety certification guidelines on April 25th. we received the 2025 Q1 quarterly notifications on May 1st from Bear Valley, PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E. And that is it for me, but I can pause for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
I do, which is when can we expect to get an update on the safety certification submittals?
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't really hear that. Can you repeat that?
Couldn't hear me. I was wondering when we can expect to get an update on the safety certificate filings.
Oh, okay. I can follow up with the safety culture branch and get you that information.
Thank you.
Without other means, I'm going to just ask board member Seifert directly if she has any comments.
I do not have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others in the room? Dakota, thank you for your presentation. My comment is just that we're eager to continue participating in the risk model working group, and we'll have with our recommendations that we intend to approve today, we'll have some content towards the approaches process that you're implementing this year. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, we need to, before you go, Dakota, we need to do if there's any comments in the room. Go for it, Justin.
Yeah, this is Justin Lane on behalf of the California Municipal Utilities Association. I mean, I'm not sure if you're able to answer this question, but I did see that at the CPUC's climate adaptation rulemaking in the workshop they had in April, OEIS gave a presentation where they presented their recommendations on wildfire safety changes and climate adaptation changes that would be addressed through CPUC general orders. I mean, I was just wondering if OEIS can provide an update on whether that would be a formally filed proposal and what their plans are as far as further engagement in the CPUC.
I do not have an update on that right now, but I can follow up and find that out though.
Thank you.
Okay. So does that, I don't have to follow up on that comment, right? Dakota will reach out to Justin Lynn directly. Okay, thank you. Any other comments in the room? Any on the phone or by email?
No comments at this time.
Okay. Okay, the next item is the discussion of the adoption of the 2025 recommendations to the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety. For this item, board staff will provide a brief summary of our recommendations.
Good afternoon, board members. As you are aware, the statute requires the board to make annual recommendations to energy safety and WMP requirements, safety culture assessment and compliance process. For this year's recommendations, the board asked staff to focus on two topics. One of them was the effectiveness of work that's been done to date, and the other was looking more closely at the risk model. Board staff worked with board committees to research the topics and develop recommendations. Staff developed an initial draft document and sent it to board members in early March. We also used this draft to get feedback from our colleagues at CPUC, Cal Fire, and Energy Safety. We continued to revise and refine the draft and put out a version of public comment on April 23rd. Comment period was 3 weeks long, and we received 4 comment letters. We published the final staff draft on May 23rd, which included changes in staff's response to those comments. And that's the version that you have as part of the materials. The presentations today will summarize the report with an emphasis on those two topics I mentioned earlier, effectiveness and risk model. I'll kick it off on effectiveness. Board staff addressed a couple of questions. One is, what is the overall effectiveness? And what's the relative effectiveness of different measures? Given that work from the board,
Mark, would you speak a little bit more closely towards the mic?
Yes, thank you. Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So the board staff addressed a couple of questions. One is, what's the overall effectiveness? And then the second is, what's the effectiveness, relative effectiveness of different measures? Given that, where can the board add value by making recommendations? The first approach that we took was to take a look at overall fundamental measures of effectiveness, and those are the number of fires and the number of ignitions, which we expect to see going down. We don't necessarily expect this to be a smooth annual decrease. There's going to be some variation from year to year, depending on weather conditions and other variables. But now that we're several years into wildfire mitigation with tens of billions of dollars spent, the question was, what can we say about the effectiveness to date? And so you'll hear from Unique about that.
Thank you, Mark. One way that we measured effectiveness is by looking into the annual wildfire data. We first took the wildfire activity statistics report data, also known as Redbooks. These are reports published annually by CAL FIRE. They're a record of wildfire incidents that were responded to by CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE attributes a cause, which allows us to look at the number of utility-related wildfires. We mainly looked at the total fires and power generation, transmission, distribution categories. We did run into some limitations with the Redbooks data. One was that the incidents included are only those that CAL FIRE responded to within the state responsibility area, also known as the SRA, which is where CAL FIRE has firefighting authority. While some local jurisdictions do submit their local responsibility area, or the LRA, ignitions data to CalFIRS, which is the data source that feeds the Redbooks, the data does not include incidents that federal and other local agencies may have responded to. Another limitation is that other electrical ignitions, such as events started by residential electrical equipment, are included in the same category, though we have heard from CAL FIRE that this is a smaller number. Therefore, while the Redbooks data does give a general idea of electrical utility ignitions per year, the numbers should be treated as estimates. So here we have a graph that shows the fires from power generation, transmission, and distribution versus all fire causes, excluding lightning. We excluded lightning from this study because lightning is naturally occurring, it's highly variable, and it's less subject to human activity. We have this blue line here representing the percentage of power generation, transmission, and distribution fires over time. One takeaway is that the number of fires is pretty consistent from year to year, despite big variations in, for example, precipitation and fuels. So one idea we had was that looking at the percentage of utility fires could be a way of accounting for weather. We still think that weather plays a big role in utility wildfire risk, but it's not as simple as looking at whether a year was wet or dry. The other takeaway is the trend. There does seem to have been an increase in utility-caused fires from 2008, but we are hesitant to say that we see a downward trend for reasons we'll explain in the next slide. So next we have ignitions data reported to energy safety based on specific ignitions criteria. Here we have the total ignitions data for large IOUs. It's divided by year from 2015 to 2024 and provides the ignitions incidents reported by IOUs PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E. We can see a decrease in the most recent years, specifically 2022 and 2023, matching the shape of the previous fire data. However, there was a rebound in the number of ignitions in 2024. Overall, we don't see a trend here, and that also makes us hesitant to describe a trend in the fire data. Lastly, we specifically looked at the ignitions incidents that occurred in the high fire threat district. We do believe there is a trend in the decline of ignitions incidents of the 3 IOUs, even with an increase in ignitions in 2024. So in conclusion, the weather impact on ignitions and fires is deeper than just whether a year was wet or dry, and there is no clear trend in ignitions and fires over time. That could, however, just mean that we don't yet have a long enough record. Thank you, and I will now pass it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Unique. Next slide, please. The other element we looked at was the effectiveness of specific measures. So covered conductor, undergrounding, enhanced vegetation, and other methods used to reduce wildfire risk. There have been a variety of ways of looking at this. So, for example, the utilities have commissioned controlled environment studies of covered conductor, covered conductor system, drop a branch on it, and look at the effectiveness against ignition in those circumstances. Utilities also look at the number of emissions on treated and untreated segments and use that as sort of a before and after comparison. There are hundreds of ignitions a year, which is still too many, but for statistics, once you start dividing that up by geography and the type of mitigation, the statistics are small numbers, and it's harder to tease the information. That's one of the major challenges in looking at this effectiveness. The utilities also look at outages, so there are more outages a year than there are ignitions, and that can be used as a proxy for risk in ignitions. There are some confounding factors though, so for example, outages during winter storms could have very low ignition risk, so show up as an outage. Of course, the utilities try to control for this, but one more thing that you have to manipulate in the data. And it also wouldn't show up in outages if you replaced an expulsion fuse with a non-expulsion fuse, even though they have an effect on wildfire risk. So you can use this proxy, but it's not a perfect relationship. And then critically, as you pointed out in your discussion of what we saw on emissions and fires, it's just very hard to say that we have enough time elapsed, whether we have enough data before and after to say what the real is. A second challenge for the data is that sometimes there's more than one mitigation measure applied to a single circuit. So it's hard to tease apart the effects of those. And then a third is just inconsistency in the programs and how the data are reported. So for example, there are differences in the vegetation management approaches used in enhanced vegetation management by 3 large IOUs. And then on top of that, they report the results in different units. So PG&E and San Diego and Southern California Edison used circuit miles, San Diego Gas and Electric used the number of trees. Very hard to make a comparison across those utilities in that case. And then the last challenge, and Unique talked about this as well, was the difference in weather. So one of the things that we've heard a few times is you can't really look at 2022 and 2023 data because those were high precipitation years, those were wet years. And if you look at the rebound in 2024, maybe there's some strength to that argument. But if you look at the steady number of fires overall in those 2 years, you don't see a big decrease in fires. That suggests that the amount of precipitation in and of itself is not a great proxy for the number of fires in this way. So if that's the case, but we also still really believe that weather variability is an important part of the risk. There are ways that you can look at it. And one effort that we pointed to is a group of economists from UC Berkeley that looked at PG&E data. And it took all the ignitions on PG in this system from 2015, I think it was, to 2019. They used a machine learning model on the ignitions and weather conditions. And then they used that model to calculate risk for each circuit on each day from 2020 to 2023. So that was their before and after, up to 2019 and 2020. And with that machine learning model, they were able to compare days with similar weather before and after mitigations. And they used that to calculate a number of avoided emissions. So that's the effectiveness measure. They went one step further and calculated a cost effectiveness by using cost data and dividing that by avoided emissions to get some dollars for avoided emissions. And they had some observations from their report that suggest cost-effective ways to mitigate. It's a very interesting study, and we bring it up primarily to show the kind of sophistication and effort and resources that are needed to really pull out that effective weather and figure out what a similar weather day looks like. There are some quote-unquote simplified metrics of weather, and most of those we would call the fire potential indices or FPIs. So these are widely used by utilities, primarily in operations, but also in planning, to condense that weather variability into a single number that can be compared. Those can be helpful tools as well, but really need to be tailored to a specific location. So given the challenges in measuring effectiveness, the recommendations that staff and the committees developed really started with clarity. So one recommendation was to ask utilities to provide more information on their FPIs, how those And then the second was to include clear annual tracking of effectiveness using dividers and emissions, just as fundamental measures of the effects we see and expect to see. The third was asking energy safety to continue building on the work it has done to date and requesting studies of effectiveness, these control environment studies or others. And then the fourth was to propose using standard units of measurement that energy safety can choose for the same mitigation. So with that, I will turn it over to Sean for his presentation on the risk modeling.
Great, thank you, and Mark. As Mark mentioned in the beginning, our second deep dive was looking into the utility risk models. And for this, we landed on a theme of accounting for uncertainty within the recommendations. So to kick off this presentation, I just want to say that uncertainty risk modeling is well known. It's essential for regulators and other stakeholders to understand the limitations and capabilities of the utility risk models and how they're used to make decisions. In the April risk model working group, there was a very quote from Dr. Mitchell from the Must-See Grade Science that we're not improving ourselves by ignoring. But that's the next slide, please. This is a visual from SE's 2023-2025 base WMP, and it really shows how the utilities are using wildfire spread models within their risk models. So the wildfire spread models are a proponent of to calculate the wildfire consequence values. Utilities use a backdrop system that simulates fire spreading from a specific location. In the utilities case, they simulate ignitions across their assets many times a day, so millions of that. Okay. Million times every single day. In this image, you can see their utilities use a variety of inputs, run an 8-hour unsuppressed simulation, and then pick out output from a distribution of values. In this case, SCE is using the maximum consequence value at each asset location. So all utilities use a single model to calculate their consequence, and moreover, all utilities are reliant on the same model. In some examples of variables within the wildfire spread models that are sensitive and that can lead to increased uncertainty include but are not limited to wind speed and direction, ignition location and ignition timing, as well as fuel class and topology. Next slide, please. So there's many other multiple models to better understand uncertainty with models. One example is global climate modeling, or GCM. At a visit ago to PG's hazard awareness or HAWK, we saw that being designing models to as converge and closer to your date. In this image, we can see where initial conditions providing very outputs as time progresses. These results can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. In this visual, there's 3 examples. The first one showing quantiles, the second using a minimum or maximum value or the range within them, and the third being a threshold for probability or the probability of exceeding a certain threshold. So as mentioned in the last slide, currently using a single spread model, and then they use distributions to a single value. So what's wrong with that collapse? Can you go to the next slide, please? Reporting a single value from a distribution of simulations is a representation of the result. Effective decision making and oversight require a better understanding of distribution of risk and actually those tail risk most extreme. So here is an example of 9 very different distributions that all have the same min, mean, and max, or same mean value. So if you could move forward, please. So here you can see the very different interpretations of results, all equating to the same value. So the one final point is on the precision in reporting. So we use significant as a representation of degree of precision or the figures known to some degree of reliability within output. Utilities within their WMPs are generally reporting 4 significant figures. All the figures, and then within the quarterly data request, it's up to 15 significant figures. Reporting to these levels misrepresents the level of uncertainty throughout the risk model process and provides a false level of confidence in model results. Without fully understanding all aspects of the individual models, we cannot provide a recommendation for what specifically the correct level of reporting should be. Models have this level of precision as a reporting curve. Next slide, please. So with that, we have our recommendations. So the first one is to compare multiple wildfire spread models when calculating wildfire consequence. We believe they should test and compare at least 3 models, one of which should be open source and peer reviewed. And utilities should have a justification on why the model works. This follows up with energy safety should establish clear standards for wildfire mitigation plan reporting of wildfire spread models, including verification, validation, and sensitivity analysis. And they should develop standards for input data and methods to identify and compare standardized outputs. Next slide, please. Next is looking at those probability of distributions. So first, we want to recognize the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety in their ACIs, or areas of continued improvement for the IOUs. They point this out, and we just want to encourage them to continue pressing for reporting of full distributions rather than just single values from those distributions. Again, so we just have a full interpretation of what those calculations are. And then finally, as soon as practicable in the WMPs or WMP updates, to report an appropriate number of significant figures. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mark for safety culture assessment.
Thank you very much, Sean. The next slide, please. So the last section of the report was safety culture assessment. The CPUC earlier this year voted out its safety culture assessment process. In that recognition that the CPUC and energy safety both have safety culture assessments, it would be best if those were coordinated and aligned. And so they've developed a working group, a public working group, to help with that. The recommendation is that energy safety work with CPUC staff to include board staff in those utility safety working group meetings to understand latest developments and help inform potential future board recommendations. I'm glad to say we've been slightly overtaken by events on this one. We are on that group, and the first meeting of it is next Thursday. So with that, that's our summary. Of course, happy to take any questions. We'll get to the staff update as well. I'm going to attend the first one, and then we have a new staff starting at the end of the month.
Thank you very much, staff, for the wonderful review of the report. I would like to ask if there are any public comments in the room. Any comments or questions on the phone or by email?
No comments at this time.
Okay. I will ask my fellow board members if they have any comments. Board Member Seifert, do you have any comments?
Sure. My comment is, well, to talk about the ignition one quickly, it's really encouraging and fascinating how much analysis that the board has been doing with the additional staff that we've had lately. So thank you to Unique and Mark and Sean for providing all of this insight and analysis. I think that the efforts to track effectiveness are super important, and I agree that it probably just hasn't been enough time to actually see the effect because there's going to be variation due to a lot of different conditions. But I think the fact that now the process has started is really important so that we can actually look at what effect the different mitigation actions are having in real life. But the other comments have to do with the modeling, and they are coming from a perspective of myself, who has been a long time ecological and wildfire modeler. And what I want to say is that recommendations to add more models may sound like a whole lot of extra work, and it probably is, but the implications are really serious because uncertainty in models is a real thing. For example, in studies I've done using species distribution models, which are basically models looking at the geographical distribution of species, studies have consistently shown that the greatest source of uncertainty is in the type of model that was used to create the prediction. And so what this is saying is that different types of models are just fundamentally different. And if you put the same input data into 3 separate models, there's a good chance you're going to have 3 completely separate results. And so these outputs of these models are being used to make essentially life or death decisions in terms of where are we prioritizing, or where are the utility companies prioritizing where they do measures first. And it also can help with efficiency in doing the mitigations in the places that really need it the most. So I appreciate that it is a lot of extra work, but I think that once it were to become operational, it could provide a lot of insight, because the output of one model and another could be so different that they result in completely different decisions that are being made. So I think that's all that I will say, but I also, it's the thing with the significant digits, it might also sound like it's not a big deal, but the amount of uncertainty that's introduced in any kind of modeling probably far outweighs the large significance of the digits. So that's just a little bit of a hopefully provided extra context to why these recommendations, why we made them.
Thank you very much, Board Member Seifert. So, and yes, Board Member Batcher.
Sorry, I was looking when you asked. I too want to thank the staff for such an in-depth reading of the material that exists and the interviews you did, and of course incorporating some, not all, of the comments that were made in terms of the earlier drafts. Just an observation from my own work is if I look back, even though I'm looking at the figure 4 and that shows the large IOU ignitions in high fire threat districts areas from 2015 to 2024, just from a very practical, looking at a lot of data, is amazing to me in my former life as being president of the CPUC, the amount of progress that has been made since 2019 to the current, what is used to measure, and the modeling that is done, and I dare say is upon everything from the weather data centers that each of the IOUs has, and the emergency established the type of science. Amazing what has 2019, and to the IOUs, they didn't do it on their own. They were ordered in many cases to do it. So there is, even though there's been this rebound in 2024, I wouldn't call it that, but I won't argue over editing the report. I think the proof is in the data and in the observations that there has been a major maturity among the IOUs in terms of what they have learned and how they are mitigating fires and learning from it. And we're in a new era now as we are experiencing and learning from the wildfire urban fire as in LA. So anyway, just an observation that there has been improvement, I believe, a great deal of maturity on their part, and also an expenditure where one of the IOUs just commented to me that the wildfire mitigation group was one person 3 years ago. It's now 15. So just a note that when they add people, when we put more, we, the regulators and we observers and advisors, add more requirements, it means a lot more person power. And at the end of the day, who pays for that? The ratepayers. So just a little cautionary note that more is a very, very helpful, but only more when it really adds value that is going to go to the bottom line of wildfire mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I just want to make a quick comment that when we're speaking, let's all make sure to lean closely into the mic to get through to those that are virtual.
Probably should have identified myself. I'm sorry, Maribel.
I mentioned your name. That's great. Board Member Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. The extent of our comments perhaps could be limited to what it is that we just heard from Board Member Batcher in regard to the progress that has been made by the utilities, in terms of identifying risk, mitigating that risk, and reducing the wildfire, given the purview of our responsibilities. But it may be that our recommendations are circumscribed as a result of the purview of our responsibilities, in that what we're suggesting or recommending is that it's energy safety that's making recommendations for changes that would be made to utility practices. But when I reflect on some of the analysis that's been done here, what comes to my mind is that it may be utility data that is being brought to bear in order to be able to do some deeper dives and come to some conclusions that have a broader application that I think that we're interested in, and that is, are these practices, are we getting the biggest bang for the buck? That we're going to have to, I think, look past the utilities, and we're going to need to look to the Public Utility Commission and other stakeholders that are going to be able to help us question. The utilities are first and foremost looking at their circumstances, they're at have the measures that are most effective, and their concern is that they're doing their best in order to protect those interests. And it's going to be part of the regulators and stakeholders that I think can help us conceptualize what it is that is being achieved with these various measures, and then give some guidance to policymakers as to whether or not there's some greater or less emphasis that should be placed on one measure or another. And so I'm just struck that, I support the recommendations that have been made here, but it seems to me as though we also should be thinking in terms of the stakeholders and the regulators that have a role to play in order to be able to help answer a broader question than what an individual utility is going to be able to provide us. And so I think that it's important for us to think in terms of transparency. It is important for us to think in terms of how do you put stakeholders in a position to be able to help shape the information that could be provided by the utilities in order to be able to help them conduct their analysis. But recognize that it's going to be these non-utility parties that are going to be important for us to be able to answer some of the broader questions that I think that we're trying to get to with these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from other board members? I'd like to make a few myself. Board member Thatcher and Haynes's comments and support them. I want to as well. So transparency of these types of analytics. The only way we know they're effective is through that transparency. This board member Thatcher mentioned that many of the analytics or mitigations that have done were originally ordered. And what many of these recommendations are aiming towards is making sure that the IOUs and the regulators understand the modeling that is being used to move the needle. And this is right, we don't want to make it a more costly endeavor. We do though, I've said this in board meetings past, that scientific complexity to move into policy is a really complicated matter and probably not one that is well practiced in the world. And so we're embarking on new territory by making these recommendations that I believe would actually result in more efficient and better understood understanding of our environment. I want to point out that the histogram example was an excellent one, and I've actually been working on using histograms in my day job towards describing what the range of possibilities can be in a simplified data visualization. So taking ensembles to a punchline is very useful for businesses to make decisions, but it does describing in this record. It does diminish and understand what's possible. So this is also a data visualization problem as well as an analytics problem. I'm about these recommendations. It can really help move the needle to efficiency. But I also that the infrastructure safety and provide iterative feedback so that we can help move this forward in a way so that we help the IOUs challenged in delivering on these types of recommendations to keep the ball rolling. And those are my comments about that. I think that's we'll move us on. Do we? Sorry. Oh, so, yes. So with no, I educated the 2025 Office of Energy.
So moved. Board member.
Vice Chair, second.
Excellent. It's moved and seconded to approve the recommendations to the Office of Energy Infrastructure as presented. Those in favor, well, actually, can I make one? I'm going to be annoying. I was looking at the staff draft. Sean, you had an excellent quote from an economic models paper. Is that quote still in the report? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
The quote from this presentation?
The quote about all being informed by one model takes us all in the wrong direction if it's not right.
Yeah,
It's in there?
Okay, I just wanted to make, I didn't want to add, we can't add text after we approve, correct? Yeah, okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that quote was still in there. Okay, so. Vote, please.
Board Member Armstrong.
Aye.
Board Member Armstrong, aye. Board Batcher. Board Member Batcher, yes. Chair Block.
Aye.
Chair Block, aye. Board Member Haynes.
Yes.
Board Member Haynes, yes. Board Member Mater.
Aye.
Board Member Mater, aye. Vice Chair Porter. Aye. Vice Chair Porter, aye. Board Member Seifert.
Aye.
Board Member Seifert, aye. Chair, we have 7 votes in favor, none against.
Great. Thank you for the vote. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Wildfire Safety Advisory Board has approved our 2025 recommendations to the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety as presented. Before moving on, item in the agenda, I'd like to propose a 5-minute break. Is that all right to do? Okay. Or 5 or 10? What do we want? 5 is fine. Okay. So we'll take a 5-minute break and reconvene at like 3 minutes after 2 p.m. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I just thought it was like. You can see that. just taking attention to returning to the meeting. Okay, we're at item 4 on the agenda. Thanks, everybody. We are back. Next on the agenda is the POU committee reporting on its plans to review the advisory opinions on the WMPs of publicly owned utilities and electrical cooperatives. I'm handing that to, who am I handing that to? To a board member, Mater.
Thank you, Chairman Blunt. Same way, right, yeah. First, I want to start by thanking and knowing that this was developed with the feedback from some of the POUs themselves. Go to the next slide. And try. How's that, Chairman? Okay. Great. All right, so this was the report on like some of our plan changes to the way that we review the POU WMPs. Previously, we attempted to review all of the plans, to have all of the board members review all of the plans, but there simply wasn't resources. This is not actually our day jobs. And so there just simply wasn't enough board member time to go around. So what happened was that we started to review the plans in batches. We'd be assigned batches of plans to review each of us. Now, all of us have a particular expertise, and that means that not all the plans were observed from all the different expertise on this board. And that really wasn't like the best that we thought that should be done. Slide, please. This also, of course, since we had a limited amount of analysis on each one of the plans, led to a limited detailed recommendations. If those recommendations were perhaps given, they would have been from the perspective of Dr. Member Seifert expertise in forest science, or my expertise in electrical utilities. Now, and that led to more of broad recommendations in most of these WMPs that wasn't really able to get to the detail necessary to make all the improvements that we think were possible. Slide. And exacerbating just the resources of the board members, there's also there was a balancing act. We have limited resources. We are going to have 4 staffers, but we were limited to 2 for many years. There simply wasn't enough time. And then we, of course, have other statutory requirements that we need to fulfill, such as making recommendations to the Wildfire Safety Division about the wildfire mitigation plan requirements. The board now, we have 4, and we're confident that that is going to enable us to be able to make more detailed decisions. I have to work in the hats. That means what that represents is that as a board, we have many hats that we, meaning all the different legislative requirements of all the different analysis that we need to make. Slide. So in the future, what we're looking to do is to review, of course, we're going to review and provide advisory opinions for each WMP. We're going to develop a template to look at a certain level, but we're going to go into 14 of the WMPs in more detail. And then we're going to focus on a number of the selected topic groups of 14 different criteria as required by legislation. And the staff will solicit analytical feedback from all board members on those plans that we go into deeper detail. The particular focus on the topic areas, that probably is going to be changing year to year. This is something that the board has talked before, but we want to have a continued emphasis in seeing the development and maturation of each of the plans. We are seeing in general a real improvement in the plans themselves. We met with the San Francisco POU this morning and really noted how much their plan had developed year after year after year. We'll be looking towards examples for maturity examples, such as the study by Stanford, the utility wildfire mitigation plan development criteria and maturity tiers, and the International Wildfire Risk Mitigation Consortium Wildfire Risk Mitigation Maturity Model. Okay, slide. So we plan on developing a feedback rubric, something that we can be clear on, like when a plan is developing and the areas in which it is developing, and then those areas in which we believe that the plan is accomplished, and then those that are exemplary. We also hope that this will drive conformity in our evaluation of all the WMPs and ensure our compliance with our statutory requirements of our evaluations. First, of the 14 different WMPs that we're going to look at in detail, we're going to prioritize those WMPs by the amount of overhead that they have in the high fire district areas. And you can see that, out of the 50 POUs, 21 of them have some overhead circuits in the high fire threat district area. And we're going to try and prioritize those for the more in-depth analysis. Slide. So this year, really, what's driving our particular areas that we're going to go into more depth and detail is, the really sobering examples of the fires in Southern California this last year. And so we're really going to ask and examine, like, what is the maturity, the effectiveness of the risk assessment in these plans? And then something that we really think that we need to look around all the different WMPs and look at what are the plans, what is the capability for each one of these utilities to assess the need for preemptive de-energization. We all saw, like, how fast those fires went through Pacific Palisades. They weren't utility caused, but it really is a sobering thought and a motivation for us to re-examine the need to really look at de-energization in these plans. Slide. So moving forward in 2025, we will be reviewing all POUs and co-op WMPs, but in depth topic areas, we'll be reviewing 14 of those WMPs, prioritized by the amount of overhead exposure that they have in the high fire threat district area. And then we're going to be issuing one document with advisory opinions to each one of the utilities. Questions?
Yes, I have one, Chair. And that is what you just said, well, one document with advisory opinions to each utility or the 14 WMPs that we review.
Every single one, we are required to issue the advisory advice to every single one of the POUs, but we will be doing so in more detail for 14.
Right, got that. Thank you. I want to thank the POU committee for taking this consideration and making it more productive and more functional for us. Any other comments from the board?
Let's not put exemplary in the presentations in the future.
What about board member Seifert? Any comments?
No comments on this, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments in the room?
Yes, and thank you, Justin Lin for the California Municipal Utilities Association. Maria, is it possible to just ask a couple clarifying questions? Just to make sure I understand. So for the 14, and I think part of the confusion is 14 is used, if I'm understanding correctly. So there's the 14 statutory areas that are being reviewed. All POUs will have a review of those 14 areas. For the 14 POUs you identified, there'll be a much more in-depth analysis of 2 to 3 topic areas each year. And this year it's going to be risk assessment and preemptive de-energization. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. And under your proposal, the 14 POUs for the in-depth analysis, that will stay the same year to year unless there's a change in their miles of overhead, or do you plan to rotate through POUs?
We'll probably be rotating through so that we will probably rotate through all the 21 POUs that have overhead in the high fire threat district area. But eventually we'll get to every single one of the POUs.
Yeah, the greater than 10 miles in the high fire threat district is just a place to start.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's all. So I think just initial feedback, and we really appreciate the thought that went into this. And I think we all understand that there's a lot of work involved in reviewing all these plans, and there needs to be some way to reduce this burden. One comment I have is that I think this will be the first year that you will have a significant number of the POUs that don't have any overhead facilities in the high fire threat district that will be using the alternative reporting methodology that that you adopted in your guidance advisory opinion last year. And so hopefully that will help reduce some of the burden because they won't be submitting new plans with their existing plans. So hopefully that you'll see some reduction in burden from that. And just in your comments, we look forward to working with you as you implement this, and we'll take back everything we've done today to the individual POUs, get some feedback from them, and back to you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Our Black board members, thank you. Join us today with SMUD. I want to echo Justin's comments and thanks for your thoughtful approach. And we do look forward to working with staff and with our faculty pair to dig into these different 14 issues and how you want to look particularly at those 2 in-depth areas. So I'm sure we'll be having further conversations on that and look forward to it. The other item I did want to bring up is just to remind you all of our timing and process. So 2026 is going to be for most of the POUs, the comprehensive review period. And so we'll actually be starting that process as soon as we submit our 2025 plans in June. So by the time we see some of this output, formalized from you towards the end of the year, because of the way the process works under the legislation, we'll have already completed initially our analysis, our drafts, and we'll be in sort of the final steps of preparing our documents for our qualified independent review, which takes some time, and then making sure we're using time for getting public input and doing some of that public as well. So, as we have these, as much transparency, I love that word that we've been hearing a lot today, and dialogue up front that we can factor into and consider as we are preparing our comprehensive updates for 2026 July 1 submittal. That would be great, because otherwise, if it's, for the larger programmatic approaches or things that require some resource investment or time to materialize and operationalize, those may not be available until 27 or beyond. And the sooner we can start putting those into, particularly since, I know for SMUD, we've adopted a similar approach. IOUs with doing a 3-year plan and then just updating those in the non-comprehensive years. The more we can do, obviously, up front is better for the whole effort that we're looking at here. So just wanted to bring that out again. again, look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And Chair Black, I'd like to kind of address that. We absolutely understand the cadence that we happen to have now will keep us ahead of the deadline curve, right? Plan of action, right, that doesn't burden the POUs. And in this, since we will concentrate on two areas more specifically, that will inform you on how you'll address it in the update and your more comprehensive plan. We're not just going to fling it. And yeah, we happen to enjoy the cadence that we have now. It took us a while to get there. We wanted to, build the baby up with the bathwater. However, we haven't served you well by a full and concerted efforts in leveraging the expertise of this board. It's as board member Mayer said in the beginning, it was jack of all trades, a master of none. And at times we couldn't identify what you were doing or what you weren't doing. And in that, this morning was an example of the actual maturity of the community that I think this process will help us be able to identify that you're delivering, where you're at in that maturity model, and ultimately how we improve. That's it. And we chose the, like I said, risk assessment and preemptive de-energization as one that we're talking about currently right now. So
I feel in your comments that we also believe that a working group process and getting together is very valuable.
Yeah, and we anticipate that this will create an ability that if there is a concern with a particular POU, we'll be able to address that in the working group.
It's really kind of low. One moment, hold on, Susie.
Oh, no, please.
Oh, okay, go ahead, please carry on.
Susie Berlin for NCPA and GSPC, the Northern California Power Agency and the Golden State Power Cooperative. And just want to echo everything that Justin and Joy said, not going to repeat it, but I would like to offer one suggestion when we have our next working group meetings, when we talk about different ideas that you want to go into more in-depth on. If, this year you said it's going to be a risk assessment and the preemptive de-energizations, and I appreciate, even though we can call it PSPS, I appreciate the nod to understanding the distinction. But I think it would also be helpful if we could look a little ahead, and if there's already something in mind that you're thinking, what do we want to focus in on for the 14 in-depth ones for the next review, so that the utilities could also be looking at those areas so that we can have a more constructive and collaborative building up of what those issues may be. But for the next time around, so I'd just like to add that to discussion items when we next. Thank you.
We have that noted somewhere. Okay. Any other public comments in the room? All right, and we'll just take a quick, would you like to speak, board member Armstrong?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Block. And I just want to thank Vice Chair Porter and Mater for the work on this. I mean, I go back to when we first started this and thinking about the time that was during COVID, so there was a little bit extra time, and a lot of the WMPs were almost temporary. So you could kind of, the methodology that you put into this is kind of what I did back then. You kind of go through, you spend a lot of time on some of them, and some of them you go through really quick. And this really helps that process. So thank you guys for working on this.
So we're, okay, so no more public comment in the room. Is there any public comment by email or phone?
No comments at this time.
Okay, and any other public, I'm sorry, board member comments, board member Haynes.
I am a little bit confused as to what it is that is expected of me in the next steps of this. And so, am I to understand that within the POU committee, that the analysis and of the POU wildfire management plans is going to be conducted, and that you're going to be working with the working group in order to be able to develop the recommendations that will come of this effort, and you'll come back to the larger board for our consideration of what it is that you're recommending to the POU.
So the staff will solicit analytical feedback from all board members in their area of expertise. So you will be contacted for the 14 in-depth, well, actually for all of them, but the 14 in-depth, and so for each staff member's particular expertise, they will provide their analysis.
So staff and the subcommittee will be reviewing all of them. We were not going back to divvying them up 10, 12 here and there. To Sean's point, it's 7 different machines trying to examine. We're going to have 7 different answers. But in that, staff is going to generate questions and focal points for each board member in their specific, in leveraging their expertise. Things that stand out.
Thank you.
And yeah, asking for input.
Thank you. And so I'm thinking now in terms of what the milestone schedule is that we have in front of us. And so the wildfire management plans are to be delivered to us by July 1st or something like that, I recall. And we'll have the opportunity to begin to review each of these plans. Again, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing and when I'm going to be doing it.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I can offer staff's current tentative schedule.
Thank you.
Pending confirmation from the board. But as you said, the WMP should all arrive by July 1st of this year. Staff are working on the rubric that Sean, that board member Mader presented. So should have that done by the time all the plans are in place. Then in July and August, staff and the committee will work on reviewing all of these. Staff will prepare questions for each board member. This is what we in the committee are seeing. Does that align with what you are thinking? Is there something we should address that we haven't, based on your areas of expertise for some number of the 50 plans? But there will not be, the proposal is not that the board will be assigned 10 a week to do, or 10 to do by a certain period. That staff will try to make the best use of board members' time by coming up with targeted questions.
Go ahead, board member Batcher. Thank you. Of the 14 or of the 50?
Of all 50.
Okay.
So those members who have done the most on preemptive de-energization and risk analysis might expect the most questions on the 14 in depth, but there will be questions to all board members based on the content of the WMPs.
Okay, thanks.
And I think the staff, of course, would welcome feedback from the board. Is this too much? Are the deadlines reasonable? Are we hitting the right areas of expertise?
Be able to comment on that when?
Anytime you like.
Okay.
Starting now. So that gets us through more or less July and August. We plan in early September to have a draft circulated to the board. We are aiming for a public draft in early October, and then finalization of a final staff draft for board consideration at the December board meeting. So that's a little rough right now, but that's the approximate schedule that the staff have mapped out.
Public comment. factored in at what point? After the draft is produced in October?
Yes, I think we would look, we also have the possibility to ask the POUs and co-ops questions during that July and August period, give them a sense of what we're thinking, let them respond to what we think we're seeing, or provide clarification or any additional information. I'll provide that transparency with the board member, that the committee members have talked about.
Good.
And then there would be that exchange, that transparency, and then everybody would see the full draft in early October with a chance to comment on it.
And definitely the POUs will know that beforehand because it will be communicated through our board. Also.
Thank you. Any further questions among the board members? We checked with board member Seifert already, just checking to make sure there's no additional questions or comments.
Nothing additional, thanks.
Great. Okay. And there's nothing to vote on, so we can move on to the next agenda item. So the next, we'll discuss and vote on the adoption, or do we need to vote on the strategic plan?
I think that will be up to you, Chair, but no vote is required.
Okay, so we will discuss the adoption of the 2025 to 2027 strategic plan. Mark, take it away.
Well, thank you, Chair Block. So I'd like to recognize that this work was guided by the Strategic Planning Committee. I'll refer to them a little bit more. I wanted to say that up front. So to start with a bit of context, next slide, please. In March 2024, the board held a strategic planning discussion that resulted in the 2024 to 2027 strategic plan with 4 priorities. To build collaborative relationships with external partners, actualizing our mission in collaboration with the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety, retaining and developing staff, and creating structures and practices for successful implementation. That plan was adopted in June of 2024 by board vote. In September of that year, the board also reordered the priorities to make actualizing our mission in collaboration with the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety the number 1. In March of this, staff also shared, in September, staff also shared a work plan and implementation plan, which included objectives for the 4 priorities, and then that was further developed into actions and milestones. In March of this year, at the board meeting, the board reviewed that strategic plan 2024 to 2027 with the help of a facilitator, and at that board meeting endorsed and retained the 4 priorities from the 2024 to 2027 strategic plan. At the same meeting, the board formed the strategic planning committee that includes board member Haynes and board member Batcher. So staff have, in that interim time, worked with the strategic planning committee to develop an update to the strategic plan. So in the materials, you'll see that in spreadsheet form that staff developed with the committee. The plan keeps the 4 priorities, it updates the objectives, and then each of those objectives now has an associated actions and milestones. Now, the biggest updates were to reframe the objectives rather than progress statements to make them into objective statements. So before it would say, we will we'll work on something, they now say this is the place that we would like to be as objectives. And then the actions are the process statements that say in the first priorities, the objectives include board members and energy safety leadership and management are deepening collaboration and satisfied with frequency and depth of communication. And then to determine whether we're doing that, staff ran to survey board members and energy safety leadership. So that's what we're accomplishing, that goal of satisfaction, frequency and depth of communication. For the second priority, there's some elements here for board members and staff to have a network of partners, a key to success. And this is developing the relationship with external partners. The board recommendations are informed by external expert advice. Board and committees and staff are deepening relationships with external partnerships, and board and staff have clear priorities for collaborative efforts. Next, please. In retaining and developing staff, a number of things that are consistent year to year. The objective is the staff are satisfied with their work-life balance, recognition, and professional development. And then there's a new objective here for board members supporting staff development. And that includes using board member networks to increase staff exposure and working with the supervisor to use the committee meetings as staff development opportunities. So that's something that the supervisor can work with each of the committees on. And then the final priority carried over was creating structures and practices for successful implementation. I think that we've come a long way on this since last year, but as the facilitator, Kirsten Talon, said, the roots are there. There's more growth that needs to happen, and that's represented here. So the branch has and follows up-to-date processes, board focuses, attention and resources on clear priorities, and then again, board members are satisfied with the frequency and depth of communication with staff. So that would be part of the survey of board members to make sure that they're getting what they need in terms of staff support. So that's a quick overview. Each of those, as I said, has a KPI and associated actions, and then there are milestones for each of those actions that are monthly for the first quarter, quarterly after that. As we progress through the year, staff will be working with the strategic planning committee to share progress, any barriers, get feedback and updates. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the board or any discussion. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from board members? Board Member Haynes.
Thank you, Chair Block. What I would like to say is that what is missing here, I think, is a little bit of context, and that is that I turn to you and applaud your effort for recognizing in 2023 that we were struggling to be able to emerge from the pandemic, and that was leading to a fair amount of inefficient activities on our part, on staff's part, and on the stakeholders. And so, to your credit, to the credit of Director over energy safety in bringing us a consultant, I think that what we've been able to do is organize our thoughts, focus the board and the staff on the statutory obligations that we have. And with that, I think that we're a more effective board than we had been. So just wanted to point that out and thank you for taking the initiative for setting us down this path.
Thank you. Any other board member Seifert, any comments or questions?
No, that's I echo what Tim just said.
Excellent. All right, so since we're here, let's take a vote. If that's all right, does that sound fine? I think we're all in agreement. We could all just move on.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion that we adopt this update to the strategic plan. One of the things that I would note is that the one thing that's missing from this that is included in the plan that had been approved by the board in June is the vision and mission statement. And so I would just recommend that, or ask in the motion that we have that reflected in this updated strategic plan.
Second the motion.
There's been a motion and a second. Mark, will you please take the vote?
Do you amend anything when you were making your comments?
Yeah, we're including the mission and vision as part of the newer document.
Thanks for being
Yeah.
To point out that it is reflected here.
So the strategic plan is a spreadsheet technically, and at the top of that spreadsheet will include the mission and vision, just as a strong reference.
And maybe this isn't going to add clarity to this, but again, what you see reflected at the with this spreadsheet is a recognition that our time is limited, staff's time is limited, and we could have taken the time to render this into a more textual document than what we have here. We figured that time was better spent on wildfire plans, recommendations to safety, and chose to go in this direction.
Thank you. All right, that's great. Mark, will you please take the vote?
So I believe we're confirming that the motion is to adopt the strategic plan with the mission and vision statement added. I see nods from
Correct.
the proposer. Very good. In that case, Board Member Armstrong.
Aye.
Board Member Armstrong, aye. Board Member Batcher.
Aye.
Board Member Batcher, aye. Chair Block.
Aye.
Chair Block, aye. Board Member Haynes.
Yes.
Board Member Haynes, yes. Board Member Mader.
Aye.
Board Member Mader, aye. Vice Chair Porter.
Aye.
Vice Chair Porter, aye. Board Member Seifert.
Aye.
Board Member Seifert, aye. Chair, 7 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Great. We have adopted our 2025 to 2027 strategic plan, and we will look to our staff for keeping us on schedule. Next item on the agenda is our meeting minutes. We will review and approve previous meeting minutes. This is an action item to approve the minutes for March 5th, 2025. Are there any public comments in the room? Are there any public online or on the phone?
No public.
Okay. Do any board members have any corrections? And for these, and then if you have any comments. Seeing no comments, I'll make a motion to approve these minutes for 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve.
In seconds.
Second.
Mark, will you take the vote?
Board Member Armstrong.
Aye.
Board Member Armstrong, aye. Board Member Batcher.
Aye.
Board Member Batcher, aye. Chair Block.
Aye.
Chair Block, aye. Board Member Haynes.
Yes.
Board Member Haynes, yes. Board Member Mader.
Aye.
Board Member Mader, aye. Vice Chair Porter.
Aye.
Vice Chair Porter, aye. Board Member Seifert.
Aye.
Board Member Seifert, aye. Chair, that's 7 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Okay, excellent. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. The board approves the meeting minutes as presented from March 5th. Our next item is the staff update. We'll move, Mark, will you please lead the conversation on the staff updates?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just some quick updates today. So one was on, as I mentioned earlier, in discussion with Board Member Batcher. I'm pleased to say that we will have a new senior policy advisor starting on June 23rd. I'm looking forward to his arrival and to introducing him to all of you. We'll put him to work right away. And some of the things that he'll be working on are in the work streams that I provide quick updates on. One of them is the safety culture assessment. As I mentioned, we are engaged with the CPUC, trying to understand, as well as energy safety, trying to understand what that process looks like and where the board might be able to productively weigh in. So that's a little bit on the back burner right now while that process plays out. We're going to be active participants in that process. The second is that Energy Safety sent a letter to the board in March asking it to weigh in on some of the risk modeling questions around how the risk models incorporate realistic extreme events like the ones that happened in January of this year. That one is also a little bit on the back burner as we turn some of the attention to the POU WMP review, which is a priority the board endorsed at the March meeting. So Sean has worked with the risk modeling committee on setting some of those questions up, figuring out what the data are available and how it might be addressed. The deep dive will happen a little later this year. And then the third work stream priority, of course, is the POU WMP review, and I think committee led a discussion of that. That's where a good amount of our work, including the new senior policy advisor, where that good amount of that work is going to be between now and the next board meeting. So those are the updates that I have. Thanks. Happy to take any questions.
Should I do public comment first? Or, okay, any public comment in the room? Any public comment online or on the phone?
No public comments.
Okay. Comments by board members. I have one question. This, the letter on the realistic nature of the risk modeling, taking into account the scenario for January. So that will remain on the to-do list, right? And then, does energy safety have an expectation for a deadline on the response?
I have elevated that. I believe that end of the year will be okay with them. If that changes from energy safety, we'll reconfigure and we'll look for them.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Board Member Haynes.
I want to Mark and staff for for guiding us on the tour with Amber Works over the last couple of days. Once again, I find these tours to be immensely beneficial. It takes us out of the paper and into the field where things are done. And for me, it just resonates in a way that I wouldn't otherwise be able to connect with some of the activities that are referred to in a wildfire plan. And yet, it just colors it in so well. It gives me better insights than certainly what I would have beforehand. And so I'm grateful for that. And please keep it up and look forward to the next one that you have scheduled for us.
Thank you, Board Member Haynes. Any other comments?
To echo the commitment that Mark and Sean and Unique have given us as a POU committee in interacting, engaging the POU community. The relationships that you built there have given us a more intimate look into their operations, something that we wouldn't have before, and creating an environment where they feel safe enough to us their best management practices and their ugly works at the same time, and to be open to listen. So thank you.
Great. Any other comments? All right. We shall move on to the next agenda item. This item is to ask the board members if you have any proposed items for future meetings. I'll start with Board Member Seifert just to see if she has any comments on this item.
Not at the moment, but I'm thinking upon it.
Excellent. Get back to the staff if you have any ideas. I think I'd like to put on the agenda for our quarterly meeting to at least have a technical update on that request letter for energy safety. So staff have already done some excellent research on the environmental conditions and how, like, whether or not they were really unprecedented environmental experiences. And I think there will be some progress on that in terms of looking at the weather stations that the utilities own and comparing that to the past. So if we're not done with the response, it might be a great time to give an update to the collective. Comment? Any other comments? Okay. Let's see. Are there any comments in the room on this agenda item? Any on email or phone?
No comments.
Okay. Seeing none, we can move to the next agenda item. This one is just public comment, general public comment for anything that has not been on today's agenda. Are there any public comments on the room for additional topics? What about email or on the phone?
No comments.
All right. Thanks, everyone. This closes the general public comment opportunity. Our last agenda item is adjournment. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're ahead of schedule, which is pretty awesome. We haven't done that in a long time. Again, we are eager to get feedback from anyone from the public or a stakeholder. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If further information you'd like to share, please email the board at wsad@energysafety.ca.gov. Thank you, Axel, for helping make this meeting possible, and Mark, Sean, and Unique for getting all of these deliverables organized and so well presented. Yeah, we're looking forward to our new staff advisor. His name is Harrison
Gifford Wong.
Gifford Wong. Cool. So we'll see him in the next meeting. Thank you very much to the members of the public and the publicly owned utility representatives that have come to our meeting and commented today. We really appreciate your time and your partnership. We'll see you at our next meeting, which will be September 3rd of 2025. This board meeting is adjourned, or do we, yeah, this board meeting is adjourned. Thanks everyone for being here. No. We're gonna stay here all day.